Hello, and welcome to another discussion in this Wars of Light and Shadow reading group. We have started our discussions of Initiate's Trial. Today is the first one. This is the ninth book in the Wars
Yes.
of Light and Shadow series by Janny Wurts. Yeah, we're talking about chapters 1 to 3 today. It's a longer book with tinier font, so we're doing fewer chapters than we did for Stormed Fortress. We meet every 2 weeks to read, I think for this book, approximately 115 to 120 pages or so. These discussion groups are open to anybody interested, so if you'd like to hang out and chat with us about these books, please check out the page chewing forum. um, or if you just like to talk to us generally about these books, but not here in the actual discussion, also check out the Patreon forum because that's where we do our discussions. We'll do a round of intros before we get into it. Jared, could you start us off?
Sure. Jared at the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel and also on podcast Speculative Speculations and the Oscar Project and other fine podcasts associated with page chewing. So join us there if you can.
I will go next because CHI comes before CHR.
Yeah, sure.
I am Chibi-Po and a longtime reader of this series and a lurker on page chewing, and really happy to be here for this one. Chris, go.
Yeah. Yes, my name's Chris Moore. I'm from the Chronicle Chris YouTube channel, and I'm also on Speculative Speculations and other fine podcasts that Jared just mentioned. And yeah, on pagetune.com as well.
Very nice. So we have a 300-ish year time skip from the last book.
Oh no! We have 2 time skips.
2.
Just in the epigraph, So we the chapter opens, about 200 and some odd years later, close to 300. Yeah. But then the epigraph is 14 years after the end of Storm Fortress.
Right.
Yes, the interdict.
And so, what went down in that time span?
Yeah. Something crazy, because we really got thrown into the middle of something here.
We did. Fun fact, I was at DragonCon one year back in mid-2000s, and Janny was there. And as was her wont to do at the time, she had a reading of, this book, part of it. And she read the first chapter. Or part of the first chapter anyway. So I got to read that, and being the insane, Wars of Light and Shadow nerd that I am, immediately realized what I was reading, because we had seen this foreseen previously, if everyone remembers.
Wow.
Do tell.
What are we remembering here?
The car's visions when they were off on that island, when he tried to pry Aerithon's future back in Fugitive Prince.
Oh, back then.
He specifically mentions a whole bit about, an incredible length of time passing, in misery and whatnot, and like the plucking of strings. I'd have to pull the chapter up to find it, but
what it was. But
I was like, oh, this is that, and I was floored. Of course, I'm floored about a lot of things in the series, but still.
Wow, that's incredible.
Weird, actually.
Yeah. Wow.
So you were sitting there doing the happy dance, Chibi-Po, at the time when it was doing the live reading of it, etc., and everybody else was around you wondering what you're so excited about. Yeah.
Well, it was a lot of, obviously the people there were a lot of fans. So I don't know. I didn't, I seem to recall that, I don't know if it was that year or a different year, but I do remember, at least once talking to Jenny and mentioned that to her, afterwards, that I'd caught that, but I don't know if anyone else did. But like I said, not everyone is an insane nerd about the series the way I am. So that's not what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And remembers, ridiculous, details like that. So, but I know there are.
Well, we're still in our first read through. We might get there. We get there in time. But there's no doubt, like, shit has gone down and the world has actually changed. I actually had a bit of a chuckle to myself that Janny couldn't write about the Coriani come to park and bring herself to actually write it, so she just did it in a sort of skip time jump thing where Coriani kind of used the absence of Lysair, as it seems, what it seems to me, to kind of gain control of the light movement, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. The epigraph says it's takes place in the 3rd year of the canon, and this is the book 1 of sort of the canon. So the there's a little hint there, and I'm trying to, I don't know what this exactly means, this canon thing, but it definitely lays down a mystery for what's to come here. And then a lot to take in, even just with that little epigraph there, that what's this declaration, what is this liaison with darkness. We know that they're blaming them for having some kind of relation with the shadow sorcerer Arathon there, but a haven for old blood talent and heretical practice and all that stuff. So there's an embargo going on, so there's definitely a lot of tension even back then. And then you skip ahead over 200 years and we see that Havish is basically under siege of a sort, but they're not gone. So it's been over 200 years and they're still holding out. So we don't know the full ramifications of all this yet, other than we open with Arathon in complete misery, as prophesized.
I found it.
Go.
Darkness rolled over him, unrelenting and bleak, stabbed through by the rippling, clean harmony of a labyrinth, given voice by the hands of a master. Notes plucked out in Arathon's best style fell like sprays of dropped jewels or sleet-tapping brass, while decades slipped by in drawn-out, mindless, slow agony.
And that was in Fugitive Prince.
Yes. Wow. Kindle, page 167.
Nice.
Wow.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's something else.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right after the bit where he had the, vision of Arathon on his knees on a beach somewhere with the unicorn about to gore him.
Oh, that's right. That hasn't happened yet. More fun times for Arathon. But did anybody understand, or are we not meant to yet, how the deal that Dakar struck, or like whatever it was Dakar did, led to this entrapment of Arathon? I guess Ilera, so at least this state of his was an exchange to protect Ilera, I suppose. So, and I suppose they could punish her for whatever, but that didn't seem to be the case. Like, it wasn't just the Coriani punishing Ilera for something bad that happened, or like something that they were admonishing her for. It was because of whatever deal that he, Ilera, etc., struck at Aether, that this was allowed to happen. So, but I don't understand.
I'm going to take a stab at it before Chibi corrects me here, right? Because this was my understanding of it, right? So, from the conversation between us and Deer then and Dakar, that's in chapter 3 of this, it seems like Dakar thought this was the only way around to secure not only Arathon's life, but also to protect the child, protect the baby, etc. And Asandir and Sethir basically have a go at him for basically saying that wasn't the only way out of this at the stage. You acted hastily, and you basically painted the Fellowship into a corner by doing that at that stage. They basically said the Sampashir were expected to stand in at that stage, and they eventually did to a certain point, but they thought they would rise up at that stage. So Dakar's deal or thing that he worked out from starting from himself and then with Allura to save Arathon's life, and then the pregnancy and all of that kind of stuff, kind of set events on a course that couldn't be corrected then afterwards. Did I get any of that right, Chibi?
That is, and I'm sure she'll message me or message us about it. That's essentially correct. Is that it? They were expecting the Bidar to do something, to act, and but I think they kind of miss that the Bidar respect free will just as well. So. If Dakar did something, the Bidar aren't necessarily going to deny him the ability to do that, to do whatever it is he did. So the whole thing there at Aether ended up entangling the Crown of Wraithen and a Coriani Oath of Debt. As to what happened after and how we get to the events in the first chapter and what he's been apparently doing for all this time. Specifics to that will be revealed. But I'm not going to say any more about that. So you'll find out.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did anybody else feel bad on Dakar's behalf that he didn't know that the Bidar was going to intervene, and so some information would have been nice? Or did he know?
I mean, definitely you feel sorry for him. That's for sure, because he thought he was doing the best thing or the only thing that he could. But it just kind of shows you his place within the big scheme. But the fact that it was wrapped in this thing of, oh, by the way, you can get out, it just kind of makes it slightly humorous as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's also them going like, wheels within wheels.
Yeah, because I was wondering if they thought that Dakar had betrayed them in some manner or betrayed Arathon in some manner, because I was kind of curious about that. And I wasn't sure. And he and they have a falling out of sorts. So Dakar's leaving. He's giving up his apprenticeship.
I think he sort of got promoted. Like he got made
promoted.
master, and so he's independent now. He's no longer an apprentice. And I think they partially did that because they are bound by oath to not intervene and try and save Arathon. So they let Dakar loose to sort of work on their behalf, I think, is my understanding. If he wants to, they're not going to tell him to do that. But they want I think they're hoping that Dakar will go help Arathon.
But it wasn't a happy parting.
No, I don't. Yes. Huh. And I guess we'll finish talking about this now since we started. But why they waited 200 years to tell him, I know they explained, but I didn't quite get that either. That it was all his fault, but also feels like something he might have guessed at. But anyway, hopefully a lot of these questions will be answered later in the book. I think we're just in the very opening chapters. It's just 200 years later, things were happy. Arathon and Ilera was sailing off into the sunset. And then we come here.
Yeah, it's sort of it's strange is the wrong word, but the way this book's set up, it's almost like a framed narrative, even though we're existing in the present, if you know what I mean, of the timeline, in terms of like having an awful lot of these things that have obviously happened in the passage of time, some of which we know about, but we didn't understand the implications of, or otherwise. But we're just kind of living with this kind of lost memory kind of thing where Arathon doesn't know who he is, but other people do, and people are looking for him. So it's convenient that he's lost his memory, for protecting him, etc. And it's almost like a rebirth or a restart of the series in its own right, because
Yeah.
it is the start of a new arc. So it made it interesting and sort of reset the rules of engagement a little bit, because we don't know where Athens at, what he can do, and all of that kind of stuff. So.
Well, yeah, and also we, like I said in the previous discussion, the end of Storm Fortress, I finally had this sense of hope at the end of that book, and then like right in the first two paragraphs, that's just totally crushed, and I'm like, there goes all my hope.
For until about the second or third paragraph, I held out hope. Not that this is much better than what we're reading right now. That maybe it's a different character who's trapped.
Yeah.
Like Killadis was a candidate because we know that he's somewhere off with the unicorns, but
I thought it was going to be Lysair. I thought it was going to be a bait and switch. That it was
Oh.
actually going to be Lysair, but that was more. All the clues and all the things pointed to Arathon, but I was like,
Yeah.
wouldn't it be cool?
Yeah, but then we got dark hair and green eyes.
Yeah. No, so hope was dashed pretty quickly here. And now, was I reading that right? That the shamaness of Mother Doc was involved in his release somehow.
And she was his daughter.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, was it the daughter that was the one?
So the old crone, as it was. That's what I took from it anyway, for sure.
Yeah, specifically when he's like, Asandir's like, I would gladly accept on my fellowship's behalf if the Corian Athane would release Talia back to us. And Salidi's like, what? And let you, leave you the means to extend your pestiferous royal lineage and seat a successor on Rathan's throne, vacant throne? Not a chance.
Dang.
So she's the one who is crushed the had the shattered crystal.
Yes, that was Glendian's daughter.
That was her. Okay, all right. That was they had her name here. What was her name?
Talia, I think.
Talia.
Yeah.
But
And the whole thing's very crushing, because at the end of Storm Fortress we get this promise of an Arathon heir that we think we're going to get to know and kind of discover and get her story, and yet it sort of goes through this whole period, and we find out that we have been introduced to her and her role, but it's been very much in service of his story still, and what happened to him. And it's very tragic in a lot of ways, even though she's very accepting of it, but yet there were still questions, because she's aged. She hasn't aged in a straight line or something. It's sort of indicated, isn't that right? And she appears older than what her age should be at that stage, being the old crone, and the fact that Arthur never knew about her. It's kind of, yeah.
Well, I thought her age was kind of extended because it's been 200 years.
It's been 200 years, yeah.
Yeah, she's an old crone, and she's still alive, amazingly.
Alive, yeah. Well, I thought that was maybe through the Coriathian kind of extension or something. I don't know, because she has been passed from one to the other.
They do have a pretty mean way to extend their lifespan. However, Celidi apparently still looks pretty young. Moria had 1,000 years to start looking the way she did. So if they were using the Coriathane methods, either they were giving her a subpar method, or it wasn't that. I guess it was maybe the Bidar. Maybe the Bidar are really long lived. What? What's that?
There's hope for me yet.
There's hope for you.
There is one interesting, or a couple interesting tidbits in the conversation with Salidi and Asandir. One where Asandir asks her, is it true, as I've heard, that every quartz crystal she ever touched, became shattered to fragments?
Yes. The answer was
yes. Makes you wish she had touched the waste of it. Yeah. Where's Lyrenda in all of this? Where is Lyrenda?
I know, I was waiting.
Yeah.
The other tidbit, and this goes to the 14 years thing, which gives us some hint of what went down post Storm Fortress, is he remarks about how He capped his latent rage for the aberrant abuses that kept Salidi's creamy skin smooth, smothered his heart's needs to let fly with rebuke for her cruelty, which once had commanded the separation of a 3-year-old girl from the arms of her widowed mother.
Yeah.
How did they manage that?
I think we can assume from that 3 years past Storm Fortress is when whatever went down with Aerithon. And
that's I was thinking that too, but I'm just wondering like that's a huge mystery. Like what happened? How could that happen that they got their hands on a 3-year-old and and whatever went down with Aerithon and Dakar and stuff, and so it's crazy.
Yeah. Everything that happened with Aerithon, I expect we'll probably learn when he gets his memories back. I'm wondering how, like, I guess the narratively, how we'll get the backstory for Glendale and Talia. But also, Go ahead.
Sorry, Finn, go ahead first.
I was gonna sort of start a new topic. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say it was sort of left uncertain to me whether this was going to be answered through this book or whether this made part of the missing short story that I don't think any of us apart from Chibi have read yet. Black Bargain, I think it is, that we're told to kind of hold off. So it was kind of like, I'm either going to get this in one or two places in terms of I'm either going to get it through the story, and I feel like a lot of it we're going to get through the story, but obviously I think there's some things that obviously will fill in the blanks of the 200 years in that short story as well.
Yeah.
And there's something about a there was an ancient score declared in an hour of bitter defeat on the morning over 2 centuries ago. Like the sorcerers had this bitter defeat, and what could that be specifically?
And how could it have happened? Yeah.
And okay, so 2 points, I guess. One is that because of this time jump, we won't get to see our favorites again, right? Maybe in flashbacks, but Sultan Evans, and who else were we wanting to see more of? Was I wanting to see more of? Jenza, I'm kind of done with her. I'm happy. I'm happy we don't get more of that. But
Jenza, Sidir, anybody in the clans actually, and that brings us on to a point about the clans, because obviously the clans have been scattered to the 4 winds and is a dying race, and
still being hunted. Yeah.
And I guess there's been some interbreeding among the clans too, because Asandir has to name the next Sganli, and Sethri is like, which branch? Are you going to pick someone with both bloodlines?
Oh,
yeah. So, that's interesting.
The world is, a lot has happened to change in 200 years,
But consider with Sganli, that means when he says which branch, you have the ones that were in Tizen who, moved to Havish and whatnot, and, and then you have the other branch, which would come from our, well, I guess now he's dearly departed, given the times frame, of our dear Sultan Evand.
Was he a Gandhi?
Yep.
Yeah, that was part of his foresight.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I'm imagining, don't worry, Chris, I'm imagining he had a wonderful life in service to Lycia.
You know what? He played his part. He did his bit. We only knew about a bit of it. We didn't get to hear about the parties that he went to or the things that he's seen, but we can just imagine.
Yeah. And I'm also worried about Team Lysair. Poor Lysair. Who are his friends now? Aerithon will eventually find friends. He has people who love him.
It appears that he's tortured. Is our Lysair? He's been, kind of thrown to the side, if you know what I mean, and tortured and self-torture, should I say, in kind of his own head. That's what it appears to be at the moment.
Yeah.
Although we only get reference to him a few times.
Yeah.
One other, before we go into Lysair, though, one other important bit from the Asandir and Salidi conversation. Recall what's no longer an issue looming over everything.
The Marak rates, right?
Oh, yes.
beyond Southgate have been dealt with.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was because of Arathon. Doing
Last Wraith was banished, so the only bit of the Mist Wraith that remains is what's locked up in Rockfell.
It's Rockfell.
In Rockfell.
Yeah. Because that was one of my thoughts, actually, TB, you bring that up.
And in Lysaea,
what could have happened in 200 years? Yeah. Oh, and in Lysaea as well. Absolutely. 100%. But that was one of my guesses for what had happened in the past 200 years was the Mist Wraith escape from Rockville, and this kind of created this big thing. But then
it gets even better. It wasn't the race escaping from Rockfell, but it was the Star Wards that were protecting Aethera were collapsed deliberately by the sorcerers. To force
individually extract the rates.
Yeah, well, to force Selene to the bargaining table is what's implied, because she had, through whatever we don't know, had apparently gained ascendancy over Arathon, and they're like, yeah, you're gonna bargain with us on this, or we're just gonna let these race through.
Yeah. So he was basically used as a slave at that stage to do the work, and then they were going to kill him at the end of it, and then
unless they released her release the Coriani from the compact.
So this was the reason why Arathon was kept alive, right? Like basically, the promise at Aether that he would survive at any cost. It was so that he would kill destroy the raids that are coming in from Marak, right? That was what prompted this. So now that that's done, he no longer needs to be held to that oath.
Well, the threat of the Mist Wraith isn't gone.
But once the Mist Wraith is done, then
presumably he'd be freed from the terms of his oath there. But yeah, no, apparently, as far as we can glean, they based on what she said, they got a stay of execution by threatening the whole world, putting it in peril. And Arathon was spent the last 200 some odd years redeeming all the wraiths from beyond Southgate, as they were, I guess, funneled down one at a time.
Doesn't that Arathon being put in that situation, doesn't that go against that? Doesn't that take away free will and go against? I mean, he has to be kept alive in order to fulfill the purposes, but he's also not doing it out of free will. So there's some kind of contrast there that's bugging me about these sorcerers. And I don't know, I'm kind of not on their side at the moment right now.
That's fair. I mean, I have to imagine that Arathon agreed to whatever state he ended up in, and
True, right? Yeah.
And we don't yet know what the circumstances were. That at least a large part of it has to be that Illyria's life was threatened, but and he was maybe going to offer his own in exchange, and the sorcerers now said, nope, you can't kill him because we need him for this other thing.
Sure.
But the Arathon agreed to that. I'd be surprised if it turns out that Arathon hadn't, but yeah, I need to know how that conversation went down.
Yeah. It is. Yeah, man, there's a lot of questions of that kind of consent and free will and stuff.
And that's what I mean by it's almost like a framed narrative, this book, because there are events that happen in the book that are actually very entertaining, as we'll get to very shortly, with the relationship with the new family, etc. But lurking in the background the whole time is like, but how the hell did we get here? How did we get here? And none of it really seems to be being addressed in a certain sense as the main narrative of the story, but I'm sure we're getting there.
Yeah. And I like that the opening has echoes of, like, it's brand new and it's a new arc and everything, but in some senses it has echoes of the beginnings of the previous arcs, like with Curse of the Mist for instance. We have these princes who are sort of making their way in the new world and learning about it, and we learn with them. And so I guess now we will learn with Arathon what um, has transpired in these 200 years, and how the world has changed, and maybe hopefully how he ended up in the state he is in. um and also, like, I guess the fugitive aspect of it, I don't think Fugitive Prince was where he was. I think it was Grand Conspiracy, right, where he was being chased and chased and chased, and he like hid in the mountains and then went somewhere else and he hid there for a while. I think that was Grand Conspiracy.
Peril's Gate.
Peril's Gate. Oh, okay, yeah. So this has a little bit of that too, except now he has company. We'll see where it goes.
Well, yeah. Yeah. But one question I still had as well, when Talia died, was it Ascendare that helped release her spirit?
I think so. Yeah, I think he saw her spirit in some form, and he had. So there was a crystal that I think Celidi did something to, and that would have triggered Arathon's death. I thought the fact that he escaped means that he's safe now, and Celidi will throw a fit. But no, it, like, wherever he was, that would have killed Arathon. But Talia intercepted that spell somehow, and she died. But I think it was not a clean death. I don't know if she would have crossed over safely by herself. Either that, or Asandi gave her a nicer crossing over than she would have had otherwise. I don't know if she would have just like hung around as a ghost if he hadn't.
Yeah, because Celadai was very mad. Of course, she said she was thwarted again.
Yeah.
And the and I think Ascendare was saying that her remains should be returned to the tribe, the Baidar.
Yes.
And she was like, "No, my purpose has been accomplished." And then she kind of went snuffed out like a candle there, but I didn't know if that was because Ascendare was able to allow that to happen without Celadai's interference, I guess.
Yeah.
Hopefully that'll be some sort of future comfort to Arathon that she's no longer in the hands of the Courier thing.
Yeah.
And was it implied that the 3-year-old child chose to go with the Korea thing? Like, they came to take
Yes.
care?
That was very much indicated. Yeah.
That threw me off too. I was like, "What? 3-year-olds?" Even though she was like way beyond her years or whatever. But I was just
but that also somehow in the intervening period, she agreed that her outcome would be this. If you know what I mean, with the fellowship, that her life was in service of this moment, and in which case she would give her life at this stage.
Right.
So
purpose,
those two things seem to be in conflict with each other a little bit, maybe, unless she was very well aware at 3 years old of what she was doing, in like an almost Fiona Earth kind of bargain at that stage. But I think that, again, her backstory, etc., is a lot to be filled in, and who she was as a person. Probably not get to know her as a person and as a character, but more the events of how that all worked.
Yeah. And yes, you brought up a good point. I was wondering about that. There was this whole prophecy thing when the child was conceived, that she is now going to be what her father's savior. Like, I am paraphrasing, obviously, but there's something to the effect that Arathon will be saved in the future because of this child's existence. And yet, Asandi seems to imply that that wasn't necessary. Like, Talia's life was forfeit and it needn't have been. Is it maybe because that? Oh! There was something else about. There were several courses of action, and one of the futures had been settled into, right? Like when they made the decision. So maybe this was the one where the child's life would be used in this manner. Maybe she would have had a different destiny if they hadn't struck whatever bargain. Anyway.
Interesting indeed.
Yeah,
lots of intrigue there.
Lots of intrigue
and questions
stuff to take in there. Yeah. We got reaffirmed that the Baidar wisdom lies outside the compact.
Yes.
From Ascender.
Yeah, because they did that beforehand. They arrived at their first. Yeah.
Did Janny tell us, or was it in this book that they struck their own bargain with the Paravians directly?
I think it's in this book.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure I read it, but within here in that little section.
Arathon mentions it.
It's it was mentioned before, but it was reaffirmed in the first chapter here in this book.
Okay.
Yeah. And so we meet what's the name of the lady? Karen's? No.
Karen's in his family.
And Elfin.
Taryn's with Elfin and
Carolee.
Carolee, yeah.
And you know what's funny? As soon as they met who we knew was Arathon on the side of the road there.
Yeah.
As soon as they met him, I was like, no, kick him away. Don't get involved. I just knew that bad things were going to happen to them once he got involved. I was just no.
I was so naive. I thought all their bad fortunes were being listed here, that their cow wasn't like milking anymore, their hens weren't laying eggs, they're going to starve. Like Arathon will show up and then he'll help them tend the farm and they live happily ever after.
Oh wow, Vasha, I have a bridge to sell you.
Yeah, I mean, like when their misfortunes were being listed, I wrote Arathon will happen to them.
Yeah, I know.
He did. He
did. And how?
He's a lovely fella, but he's a curse. Yeah.
Yeah. I really like that aspect of Janny playing up that kind of myth of the brownie, of the little fey helper, around the farm. Arathon was kind of playing that part, and I really like how she weaved that into their life and how he did it without them knowing for a little while, and they're trying to guess what's going on, and I thought that was just really cleverly done, and I like it just reminded me of those type of old English myths about the fairies helping out and around the farm and stuff. It was pretty nicely done.
So I was going to say, I think it's interesting, with this, because we know that he doesn't remember who he is.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's basically just Arathon distilled, a blank slate. And what is his first impulse to do? He's helping people.
Yeah, no, that's very true. It's instinctive in him that he's doing such a thing. Yep.
Yep. I liked this getting to know Arathon, getting to know himself.
Yeah.
And I like these new characters. I was intrigued, by their situation. We were introduced to the whole family there, and I thought they were nice characters to learn about. And even though I knew they were just going to be like in for it, I was just like, oh no.
It was
poor kids.
Yeah, but he did good. He saved lives. He revealed really major family secrets.
Yes.
Yeah.
Crap,
absolutely.
I wasn't prepared for that.
that he did, and I was trying to think. They did have a net benefit with meeting Arathon, because their brother's life was saved, and he saved Terrence too. So they lost the farm, which is bad, I guess, but at least they all have their lives. And how wonderful is this religion that makes people slave for them for a year if they do something that they think is wrong or based on a made up charge.
Yeah. It's
But it did raise the question of the hunting of the spinner of darkness and that kind of stuff. Again, this idea that people are just branded and they're still afraid, even though Arathon's sort of been not in the scene for a long time. This kind of use of that fear language and putting it into the people is still being used by those in charge as a way to manipulate people and stuff. I think a lot of that kind of comes to the fore again in this section when they actually do have something to chase at the time, but how even when they find Arathon, the people are really afraid of taking a stranger in who's got Coriathian kind of ties or otherwise. But then Terrence realizes, well, if this is the bad guy, what actually is this all about? Because this guy's done more for us in a couple of days and weeks than the Light's ever done for us, even though they were sort of signed up and whatever.
Yep. And it's only going to get worse because we know that the Coriani are going to seize the true sex faith as their instrument in Tyson. So we know it's only going to get worse as far as these light soldiers,
fanatics.
Fanatics being.
Let's call them what they are.
Yeah,
the true sect.
The light fanatics, just be bearing down on the populace, or whatever flippant reason they come up with.
Well, I don't think we've talked about this part yet, but what about the section called Tidings?
Oh yeah, it's Alara.
Yeah. Oh yes, Alara. Yes,
glitter. So now she's running around, consorting with Davian.
Yeah.
Was it Davian?
No, it's Caradman. It was Caradman, I think. Davian's still trapped in the dragon, as far as I remember from this section. Isn't that right? Because I was wondering where the hell he was through this whole period. Yeah, it's Caradman who she tries to give the ring.
Oh yeah, it's Caradman. I was trying to remember. I was like, oh yeah, and then because I got the streaked white at his temples, and I'm like, that's like the picture of Davian too. But I was like, okay, that's right, it's Caradman.
Yeah, Caradman lets her know that they displaced his memory.
Yeah.
And stuff, and she's kind of appalled about all that. Yeah.
But there's an awful lot of what's the word? Like people trying to do the self-sacrifice thing of, if I'm going to be a cause of more pain and for him to be revealed, then you need to remove this link and the protection of me and all of that kind of stuff. And it's like, right, okay. But that's not what he wanted, because she was kind of signing off to say if he doesn't know who he is, he can have his own life. He can meet somebody. He can fall in love with somebody. He can kind of do that if that's what his existence is to be. And Caravan's like, no.
Yeah. And I think Arathon instinctively recognized a like soul in Karen's, because he did the same thing to save his family. He stood up and took the blame and said, it was me. They didn't do anything. Take me away.
Sure.
And so that was a very similar thematic situation, where he's sacrificing himself for the sake of his family or his loved ones, what have you.
Yeah. And I like that Alara still has her empathic link to Arathon.
Even though he doesn't know who he is. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah. I wonder if she can do something with that in the future. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah. And apparently Arathon gave away his memories of his relationship with Alara I think the ring is tied to that somehow. So she's the keeper of the memories, and they can't use Arathon to they can't use that thread anymore to hurt Arathon, as a bargaining chip for Arathon. And it is implied that it's an irreversible process. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we got the, as you speculated, the confirmation from Alara too that whatever happened did involve her, because she talks about, when she's talking about the ring, um, she's like, but the Prime's use of me as their personal weapon against him was stopped when he bound his own recall of me beyond reach. So, somehow, well, we know she threatened Alara, at some point.
Yeah. And it's also unclear whether Arathon lost his entire sense of identity from doing the thing of separating his knowledge of his affection for Ilera from himself, or if that was part of the bargain with the Fellowship, that that's how he'll. I mean, although given how horrible Celidi is, I would imagine that she would want Arathon to know that he's being punished. So the loss of identity seems to be something someone kind to Arathon would have done. So it's unclear to me right now if they're two separate processes or if they were the same thing. The loss of Ilera meant the loss of his identity, which is a whole other level of sad. But
yeah, but Caraman also reminds her that Arathon freed remains the obstructive cipher that promises Celidy's downfall, and the Black Rose prophecy still governs his fate, in that he remains a soul stay that promised the restoration of the Fellowship of Seven. So that prophecy is still in effect, and so that's all coming soon to a book near you.
We need Kiladis back. He seemed like a really kind person in the last one. I wanted to get to know him. That's also why I was excited for the opening. I was like, we finally get to meet this guy. And then it turns out Arathon has been trapped for 200 years, killing off the raids one by one.
Yeah.
Yes. Right. Go ahead.
So Alara's going to San Pashir.
Yes.
Yep.
Don't know what's going to happen there.
Well, come have a guess.
We're worried that that's making her a target, that the Coriani are going to come after her.
But then she's headed to their ancient enemy. So if she asks for help, they will probably give it to her. And then
that's what I'm hoping as well.
Celidi can take a walk.
Yeah, that's what I'm hoping for as well. That seems to be, because I always assumed it was going to be the Fellowship that did it, but actually I think this sequence kind of makes more sense in some ways, especially given her role at the Air and stuff where they already were involved.
Yeah. Did she ever get her? I mean, not that we know, but I'm just wondering out loud if she ever got her quartz thing back, the traitorous crystal that decided that no, I'm going to be bound to the Coriani.
Yes, not. No.
Yeah.
But she's taught learned with Ath's adepts and whatnot, so she's kind of.
She doesn't need it to do her magic, but she needs that crystal to release itself so that the Coriani no longer have a hold on her, right? Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, how about that dung-feeding maggot?
Which what?
Grismard.
Oh, of course.
He's the one that gave them up. He gave the family.
Yeah.
Up.
The guy who tried to basically do a marriage proposal with some medicine. I mean, it's a new move.
Well, what are you gonna do? Is you have me or nothing, and
yeah. Yeah, I was hoping that guy was gonna get his face punched in as soon as I met him, but
yeah.
Well, I think we were all doing the whole thing, Arathon, and again that was interesting. He was.
Oh, we lost Chris.
Right in mid-sentence.
Just rage quit on him. But speaking of dung-feeding maggots, apparently Celidi is going to use a fetch again to invoke the curse on Lysair, and
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, she is. Yeah, that's part of her plan because for some odd reason she thinks she's gonna be able to control that, and that's gonna go right?
Yeah. It's- it, for a moment there, I thought she was the one releasing the rates to just as a torture mechanism for Arathon, but I guess not. That was the fellowship, not to torture him, but to keep him alive in any way possible. But um, yeah, this fetch business has got to suck. We'll
Yeah,
see.
yeah, because she's gonna use a fetch again to stir the
Yeah,
curse. Um,
yeah,
I man, I really just we just got a chance to get on Lysae's side a little bit, the last book, and now he's gonna get fetched or whatever, and
yeah.
and
Get fetched.
made an instrument of some sort. That's probably not going to be a good thing for his mental health.
No, but now I mean, he's had sort of 200 years to not exactly separate himself from the curse, but to not be quite as under the influence as he was before. I think, I think that's implied. So
Yeah, I don't know.
maybe he can fight it off in a better way.
Maybe we haven't met him yet personally,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm interested to see when or if we run into him in this book, and if we get his viewpoint at all, or if we're just going to get somebody else's um, viewpoint of him.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh. There's Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Hello.
Right in mid sentence.
Yes.
What I was saying, it's fine.
Oh, it was about Grismad, and
Oh yes, but the point I was making was that it was described in the book that he was much bigger and more strong in stature than Arathon, and Arathon scared the bejesus out of him, which was quite
Yes.
satisfying. Yeah.
Yes, always. Yeah, it's an interesting picture of Arathon. Like, he still sort of reeks of competence, so to speak, but there's also this sort of childish, almost cuteness to how he's being described. Like, just this. I think this goes back to the Fae helper thing that you mentioned, Jared. Like that, the little person helping around the house and who doesn't know himself, and like is secretly hiding this powerful being.
Yeah.
And who remembers 4 letters from his name.
Yeah. Yeah. Yep. So yeah, poor Terrence. He got the crap beat out of him.
Still alive.
Still alive. Yep.
He's luckier than most of Varathon's companions so far. Like, let's be honest.
Yeah, and you know what was interesting is how realistic his situation was when Arathon, used the Ayats to get his manacles undone and all that stuff, and it wasn't like your typical escape scene in a movie. The guy would just hop up and run out, and he'd be like, "Yeah, I'm free," but this wasn't the case. This was like so realistic in the portrayal of he like his circulation was cut off. His limbs are numb. He can barely move. He's and that was just like I was just like, oh, wow, that's so realistic, and it makes things so much more difficult.
Yeah.
And that's how, because if I got the crap beat out of me like that, I wouldn't be moving anywhere that's fast anytime soon either. So I was just like, I just loved how she pulled that off. It was just like, very, very realistic in that manner.
Those cheeky Ayats.
And I like how they kept looking for footprints, and they're like, "Oh, he must be using dark magic to not leave footprints."
They must have been flying away, you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Coming up with all the excuses. Yep.
Yeah.
Dark sorcery.
Dark sorcery.
Yeah. And I think Alara was peeking in on some of this.
Yeah.
While it was going on. And I like the question that she asked, because she's raging at her fate that the mate she cherished as her own flesh and blood should become so bereft. And whose labors had dispelled a worldwide invasion by Marek's hordes of hostile entities, should never have been abandoned to languish alone in such bitter ignorance. And I'm asking that same question. Why was he abandoned to language? And I'm just like, because we're all asking that same question up to this point, I think, because we don't have all the information. We don't know what occurred all those 200 something years ago, and we're just guessing, and so I really like that, because I'm like why
Yeah, we're still missing that as to why Asandir's like, yeah, Coriani get to do whatever they want with Aerith, and we won't interfere.
Yeah.
Here's my oath.
Yeah.
And there was a line there, I think, when I keep forgetting the name of the girl, but Terrence and his siblings were chatting about what would happen to the vagabond, and it's like, he could do a lot of work. I'm sure someone would give him a job scrubbing floors and cleaning. I think he's a master, but anywhere else he'd be like singing, at the very least singing, and like whatever, performing in the evening. But like, not that he's actually been reduced to that, but that's the perception of him at the moment.
But he did go and do some work at 3 silvers and a free beer. So
that's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Terrence had his generosity repaid 3 times over. And I like, and also like how the base Arathon is still there. Is he reads the thought in Terrence, like he recognizes the thought in Terran's mind that he may have stolen the silvers that he kept on his pillow, and like, no, here's a receipt.
Yeah.
Proving that I earned it fair and square.
Yeah, it's interesting what intuition he still has, despite the lack of his memories, because he still has that ability to control Ayats, like was more of a magical intuition thing rather than a knowledge thing, or like a memory thing, memorization thing. And he still can play, right? He played the flute. He used it to help heal Eflin, and
he knew it would help as well. It wasn't just he knew what to do. He went looking for it. He found it.
Yeah. So he hasn't had a loss of some skills. He's just had a loss of memory, and so it's interesting to see what aspects that will take on as far as we go forward here. What he still retains and how much of the magic in him is intuition and how much is memory based, and so good exploration of stuff like that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And apparently he sang to the flowers that he plucked, which have much greater efficacy than the stuff that Grismard brought for them.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Does he have a job with Hallmark, if nothing else?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Cool. Anything else? I feel like we covered pretty much.
Let me see. All right. So yeah, I still feel bad that Taryn's destiny's now tied up with this guy.
Mm-hmm.
He's not in for a good time.
No.
They were going to lose a brother. They were probably a couple of months from dying themselves. I mean, of all of the cases that have got hooked up with Arthur, he might consider this to be a better position than he was ever in.
Yep.
Yeah. Not at the moment. He's kind of in a lot of pain, but
Yeah.
maybe in the long run.
Indeed.
Who knows?
Yeah.
I like, again, the little touch on just how crazy, insane, powerful the Seven are. In the bit where Asandir and Seth, we were talking about how they're once again overburdened because, Caradmon and Luhane are, after he delivered his message to Alara, are busy dismantling the ward spells that were, winnowing out the shades, and a grand construct potent enough to dim the world's sun. It's like, that's crazy.
Yeah. That one stood out. Anything else? Any other closing thoughts?
Yeah, but I'm still mad at the sorcerers. I would like to hear Davian's thoughts on that. Anyways.
That's true. I want to know what Davian thinks of all this Adathon entrapment business.
Yeah, I'm interested in that too.
He just thinks I am dragon. There you
go. I am dragon. Nice. Cool, then let's wrap up. Let's do outros. Chris, do you want to start?
Yes, my name's Chris Mullen from Chronicle Chris YouTube channel, pagetune.com, and all its podcasts associated, such as Speculations and the Oscars Project. Chibi.
I am Chibi, and I hang around on Page Chewing and Lurk mostly, and otherwise I can be found on Blue Sky. And that's about all.
And I'm Jared, and I run the Fantasy Thinker YouTube channel, and also am on Page Chewing with those fine podcasts that Chris mentioned.
And you can find me on the YouTube channel Reading by the Rainy Mountain, and on a bunch of these other podcasts, Speculative Speculations in particular, and Page Burners, where we talk about Malazan. And yeah, that's it. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you in a couple of weeks.